Hello everybody and welcome to our series on 200 most popular idioms in English language. In this lesson, we shall help you learn important idioms with the help of interesting pictorials, meanings, stories and example sentences. These idioms are known to feature regularly in the English section of almost all competitive exams such as SSC, Bank PO, CAT and other MBA entrances, CSAT, company recruitment tests, exams after +2 and so on. So that you may bookmark and cover the idioms at your own pace, we have divided the entire content into small sections covering 10 idioms each. On your screen are the 10 idioms that we are going to discuss in this section of our video lesson. And yes, don't forget to watch the other 3 lessons in this series. Our very first idiom is a dime a dozen. Well, a dime is a very small part of currency which is equal to 10 cents. In today's world, you would probably get nothing for a dime. But this phrase is believed to have originated in the 1800s, where various foods such as eggs, oranges, peaches, etc. were being sold by the dozen for the price of a dime. Hence, the phrase a dime a dozen denotes something which is very commonly available and is of no particular value. An example sentence is, books relating to self-help or cooking tips, etc. are available a dime a dozen in the market. Apple of discord. The word discord in English means disagreement between people. Now, how can an apple cause discord between people? So there is a very interesting story behind it. In classical mythology, a golden apple inscribed "For the fairest" was thrown into an assembly of the gods by the goddess of discord, who was known as Iris by the Greeks. This was because she was not invited in that assembly, and so she wanted to spoil the proceedings. In the assembly were 3 particular goddesses, Hera, Athena and Aphrodite, who each considered themselves the fairest and wanted to claim that apple. So the apple indeed ended up causing a big fight between them. The idiom, an apple of discord, therefore means a subject of contention and envy. For example, the family business was the apple of discord for the 3 sons, heirs to the property. As broad as it is long. This idiom takes the example of a square, which we know is as broad as it is long. So it's the same whatever way you look at it. The expression is used when it is impossible to decide between 2 options because they are equal and choosing one over the other makes little difference. For example, since both the job offers that I have in hand are with reputable IT firms with the same job profile and almost the same salary, it is about as broad as it is long whether I take one or the other. Next is a bitter pill to swallow. The allusion in this phrase here is of course to the medicinal pills which are often bitter and are difficult to swallow. And the expression is a metaphor for any unpleasant fact, disappointment or humiliation that is difficult to endure. Like sometimes it is said that truth is a bitter pill to swallow. Another example sentence for its usage is, for the famous tennis player who had a winning streak so far, the unexpected defeat brought her to tears and was a bitter pill to swallow. To blow hot and cold is another commonly used idiom. Now this phrase has a very interesting origin. It comes from one of the Aesop's fables about a man eating with a satyr on a winter day. At first, the man blew on his hands to warm his chilled fingers and then blew on his hot soup to cool it. Looking at the man doing so, the satyr asked the man to leave at once because he did not want to entertain or be friends with someone who blew hot and cold out of the same mouth. This expression was repeated by many writers, most often signifying a person who changed his opinions quickly and hence could not be relied on. So, to blow hot and cold means to be changeable or uncertain about something. For example, he keeps blowing hot and cold on the question of getting settled down in a metropolitan city. Bone of contention. Well, contention means a heated disagreement. This expression alludes to two dogs fighting over a single bone. So the phrase a bone of contention is used to refer to a subject or issue over which there is a continuing disagreement. For instance, we have the following sentence. The Kashmir issue has long been a bone of contention between the two neighboring countries. Next idiom is a chip off the old block. Well, the block here refers to the block of wood, and the chips resulting from chipping away such a block would have the same characteristics as that of the wooden block. So figuratively, the phrase a chip off the old block refers to a son who behaves in the same way as his father or resembles his father. For example, Ram takes after his father and looks exactly like him, a real chip off the old block. Another idiom with the word chip is chip on one's shoulders. The phrase a chip on one's shoulder is reported as originating with the 19th century US practice of spoiling for a fight by carrying a chip of wood on one's shoulder, daring others to knock it off. So, if someone has a chip on his or her shoulders, he or she seems angry all the time because they think they have been treated unfairly or feel that they are not as good as other people. An example sentence is, having been fired by several employers, that man has a chip on his shoulders, which means he holds a grudge and is ready to fight on this issue. Cost an arm and a leg. If someone suffers the loss of an arm and a leg, it has cost him dearly. So to cost an arm and a leg means to cost a lot of money. For instance, this Omega watch cost me an arm and a leg. And the last idiom in this section is Crocodile Tears. This expression comes from the mistaken notion that a crocodile would weep to attract its prey's sympathy and would go on crying while eating it. Now, this play is quite opposite to what tears generally mean. So, the idiom crocodile tears means insincere tears. An example sentence would be, when the hockey player got injured and was down with a fractured foot, his substitute wept crocodile tears. Let's move on to section 12. The 10 idioms that we shall cover in this section are there on your screen. Cross the Rubicon. This idiom refers to Julius Caesar's armies crossing of the Rubicon River in the north of Italy in 49 BC, which was considered an act of insurrection, treason, and declaration of war upon the Roman Senate. Thus, to cross the Rubicon means to pass a point of no return. For instance, it seems that the government of UK has crossed the Rubicon by exiting the European Union? Curate's egg. To understand this idiom, look at the two guys here in the picture who are having a conversation, Bishop and the curate. They were among the people who were assigned duties in a church. Now, between a bishop and a curate, the bishop is like the senior or the boss, and the curate is the junior or subordinate. So both were having dinner on a table, and the curate was served a stale egg. The bishop says, "I'm afraid you've got a bad egg, Mr. Jones." To this, the meek curate replies, "Oh no, my lord, I assure you that parts of it are excellent." This cartoon was published in a magazine called Punch. The idiom curate's egg thus refers to a thing that is partly good and partly bad. Like I can say that XYZ movie is a bit of a curate's egg. A good storyline acted out badly. Next we have the phrase, cut the mustard. In cooking, mustard is a common ingredient. It is used as a spice and we also use mustard sauce. To cut the mustard means to achieve the standard of performance necessary for success. Now, as to how cutting mustard came to stand as an example of high quality is something that requires guesswork. It is probably an allusion to the literal difficulty of cutting mustard in its various forms, be it a mustard seed, a small one, or a mustard plant, or even culinary mustard. So remember, to cut the mustard means to be successful in achieving the desired result. An example sentence would be, she tried her best to win the singing competition, but given the tough level, she could not cut the mustard. Touch courage. Well, the etymology of this term dates back to English soldiers fighting in the 30 Years' War when Dutch gin was used by English soldiers. This gin was believed to keep the body warm in cold weather and induce a calming effect before battle. So the phrase Dutch courage refers to the strength or confidence gained from drinking alcohol. An example sentence is, he decided to have a couple of drinks to gain some Dutch courage. A related idiom is to feel no pain. It means drunk. It obviously comes from the association that if someone is drunk, he feels no pain. An example would be, although the party had just begun, after his second drink, he was feeling no pain. Ears are burning. Well, just like other superstitions based on bodily sensations, such as a flickering eye, a tingling or burning sensation in the ears supposedly means that a person is being discussed by others. The origin of this belief dates back to Roman times when augurs, religious officials who observe natural signs, interpreted burning of left ear as a sign of bad intentions by the ones who were talking about you, as opposed to burning of right ear, which implied that you were being praised. So if your ears are burning, it means you sense that you're being the topic of discussion in another place. An example sentence could be, my ears burned as I could see two of my classmates constantly looking at me and giggling to each other. Next idiom is to feather one's nest. The phrase derives from the practice of many birds to gather feathers and add them to their nest in order to make it more comfortable for themselves while incubating the eggs and then warmer for the chicks once hatched. So the idiom to feather one's nest means to enrich oneself by taking advantage of one's position. For instance, when in power, the party leader feathered his nest through his connections with big corporates. fish out of water. Everyone knows that a fish out of water would be very uncomfortable and would not likely survive for very long. So, the idiom, a fish out of water, refers to someone who is out of his or her normal environment or range of activities. For instance, when her male colleagues start discussing politics or cricket, she feels like a fish out of water. Fly off the handle. Imagine an ace during a downstroke and his head suddenly comes off and flies off the handle. The image is that of speed and that of losing one's control. Similar phrases are to fly into a rage and to blow up, etc. To fly off the handle means to lose control of one's emotions, that is, to become very angry all of a sudden. An example sentence would be, he tends to fly off the handle when people don't agree with him. The last idiom in this section is to get the sack. Now, sack is a common word in English, and this phrase is probably an allusion to tradesmen who owned their own tools and took them with them in a bag or sack when they were dismissed from employment. So, if someone gets the sack, it means he is told to leave his job. For instance, he got the sack when his employer found out that he had lied about his qualifications. Moving on to section 13. In this section, we shall cover the following 10 idioms as you can observe on your screen. Let's discuss another idiom with the word sack. This time, hit the sack. Alternatively, you may come across the phrase hit the hay. Both mean the same thing. Well, this idiom originated in the late 19th and early 20th centuries when people used to sleep on a cloth sack stuffed with hay. Before they went to bed, they would literally hit the hay to make the mattress more comfortable and to make sure there were no bugs inside. So when one says that one is about to hit the sack or hit the hay, it means to retire from the day's activities and to go to bed. An example sentence would be, I am very tired, so it's time for me to hit the sack. Our next expression is to gild the lily. As we know, the flower lily already possesses more than sufficient beauty. So to gild it, which means to cover it with a thin golden layer, is a wasteful activity. Thus, the term to gild the lily means to adorn unnecessarily something that is already beautiful or to make superfluous additions to what is already complete. For example, you look very beautiful the way you are. No need to add unnecessary makeup, as it would be like gilding the lily. Give someone the cold shoulder. This phrase is a metaphor for disdain. It is the complete antithesis, or we can say the opposite of a warm hug. When you give someone a cold shoulder, you ignore that person. You give him an intentionally cold or unsympathetic treatment. For example, when I greeted her at the party, she gave me a cold shoulder and walked away. Next, we have the idiom Halcyon days. Well, Halcyon was a mythical bird and it was believed to breed in a nest floating at sea at the winter solstice. It had the power to charm the wind and waves into a calm. Some say that this bird is the same as kingfisher. The term Halcyon thus denotes a period of time that is idyllically happy and peaceful. And Halcyon days is a phrase used in general to refer to sunny, mild and calm days during winters. An example sentence would be, the girl recalled the halcyon days of her childhood. To hit the ground running. Sometimes we say to hit the road running. The origin of this idiom is disputed, but the image is that of a person who descends from a moving train or bus or perhaps a car and starts running right away. So this idiom means to start something and proceed at a fast pace with great enthusiasm. An example sentence would be, "This college equips you well to hit the ground running once you graduate." Next idiom is, "in the arms of Morpheus." Well, Morpheus is the Roman god of dreams, and dreams generally come when you are fast asleep. So the phrase means asleep. For example, the day had been so tiring, he was soon in the arms of Morpheus. Ivory Tower is another very common idiom. The term stands for a place or attitude of retreat, where one is quite separated from everyday affairs and from the facts and practicalities of the real world. It is used most often in reference to intellectuals and artists who remain complacently aloof. An example sentence that illustrates this meaning is, "The book is far removed from reality, having been written by some college professor who has spent his entire professional life in an ivory tower." Next idiom is, "like Caesar's wife." The word Caesar here alludes to the famous Roman emperor Julius Caesar. This phrase refers to the second wife, Pompeia, of Julius Caesar, who divorced her because of rumors of her adulterous behavior, saying that "my wife ought not even to be under suspicion." So the phrase "like Caesar's wife" refers to someone whose ethics should not be questioned, one who should be above suspicion. For example, politicians and their associates should be like Caesar's wife, above suspicion. Murphy's Law. People utter this expression quite often, so sometimes you have to strain your head to recall what it means. Well, Murphy's Law, plain and simple, is the observation that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. For instance, I was already late for office, so the sight of a punctured tire at my car parking reminded me of Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will. And the last idiom in this section is, "there is no love lost between A and B." Interestingly, the phrase originally meant that A loves B just as much as B loves A. The amount of love is balanced, so there is no love lost, unlike unrequited love, which was considered to be lost. Earlier, the phrase could be used to say that they both love each other equally or they both hate each other equally. But the idiom is now used exclusively for the second possibility. So, if there is no love lost between A and B, it means that there is dislike, ill will, hatred, and enmity between the two of them. For example, we can say that there is no love lost between the cat and the dog, as we know that these two species of animals are enemies by nature. Now we move on to section 14. In this part of the lesson, we shall cover the following 10 idioms as you can observe on your screen. Let's begin this section with the idiomatic expression "on the ball." The phrase "on the ball" originated in the sporting arena and relates to the eyes. It is a contraction of the earlier expression "keep your eye on the ball," which advice has been given to participants in virtually every known ball game, be it tennis or football or cricket, and so on. So if one keeps one's eyes on the ball, then one is totally alert and in command of one's senses. The idiom means to be aware of and quick to respond to new ideas and methods. For instance, regular interactions with customers keeps the sales manager on the ball. Next is paper tiger. Now, unlike a real tiger, a tiger made of paper can't harm you. So the term paper tiger refers to someone that is outwardly powerful or dangerous but inwardly weak or ineffectual. For example, the Don was revealed to be a paper tiger and soon people stopped fearing him. Pay through the nose. Now this idiom has a very interesting origin. It is said that in the 9th century Ireland, when the Danes conquered the Irish, they imposed an exorbitant nose tax on the island's inhabitants. They took a census and levied oppressive sums on their victims, forcing them to pay by threatening to have their noses actually slit. Paying the tax was actually paying through the nose. To pay through the nose thus means to pay unreasonably high prices. To visit a metro city these days, you had better be prepared to pay through the nose for boarding and lodging facilities. Next idiom is pull out all the stops. This expression comes from organ playing, where it means to bring into play every rank of pipes, thereby creating the fullest possible sound. The idiom figuratively means to use all the resources or force at one's disposal. Like I can say, for their daughter's wedding, they pulled out all the stops. Similar phrases that carry the same meaning are to spare no effort and to leave no stone unturned. Shape up or ship out. This expression is used as an ultimatum to someone to improve their performance or behavior or face being made to leave. An example is when he reported late for work again, his boss told him to shape up or ship out. Then we have the idiom Swan Song. It's an easy one. The phrase comes from the belief of ancient Greeks and Romans that swans are mute for life but sing majestically only once, just before they die. So a swan song refers to the last performance or final act of a life or career. For example, the ex-champion said that if he lost this race, it would be his swan song. Sword of Damocles. This phrase comes from a story about Damocles, who was a courtier in the kingdom of King Dionysius. The king wanted to teach him a lesson that a king's life is not as easy as it seems. So he invited him to a banquet and made him eat his food with a sword hanging over him. This sword was tied up by a single horsehair, so it could break any time. And obviously, Damocles, who was sitting underneath the sword, could not enjoy his food because of that fear. The expression Sword of Damocles thus refers to an impending disaster. If a sword of Damocles hangs over someone, they are in a situation where something bad is likely to happen to them very soon. For instance, ever since he found out that he is HIV positive, he has been living with the sword of Damocles hanging over his head. Now, the next three idioms that we are going to discuss are all related to each other. The first of these is to take to task. Well, the best way to memorize this idiom is to remember that a task is a job, and if someone takes you to task, he or she calls you to account for a bad job that you have done. When you take someone to task, it means that you criticize that person angrily for something that they have done. An example that illustrates this meaning is, the teacher took them to task for not doing their homework. Another idiom that carries the same meaning as previous one is the phrase dressing down. This idiom is believed to have originated from military and it refers to the ceremony of degradation that is performed to discipline an officer who has done something wrong. Along with the reduction in rank, the rank insignia are also stripped off from the uniform, and so the term dressing down. When you give a dressing down to someone, you scold that person angrily. The phrase refers to the act of speaking angrily to someone about something done wrong. An example is, she received a furious dressing down from her boss in front of her colleagues. And the third related idiom is to face the music, though it does not have exactly the same meaning as the previous two. This is another phrase believed to have originated from military, from the tradition of disgraced officers being drummed out of their regiment. Since these soldiers had to literally face the music for something that they had done wrong, this phrase thus means to be confronted with the unpleasant consequences of one's actions. An example sentence illustrating the use of this phrase is, he will have to face the music later on over his unrestrained spending habits. In section 15 of this lesson, we shall cover the following 10 idioms shown on your screen. To bite the bullet. Again, the phrase is of military origin, though the precise allusion is uncertain. It probably refers to the treatment of wounded soldiers in the days before anesthesia. When such a soldier was about to undergo surgery, he was given a bullet to clamp in his teeth and bear down on so that he wouldn't bite off his tongue from the pain. So to bite the bullet means to behave bravely or stoically when facing pain or a difficult situation. An example would be, with the current downturn in family business, we will have to bite the bullet and cut down on our expenditures, at the same time find alternate sources of income. To cool your heels, an easy one. This term originally meant to cool one's feet when they become hot from walking and began to be used ironically for being forced to rest or wait. So to cool your heels means to wait or be kept waiting, as in the following sentence. The candidate had to cool his heels for about an hour before he was called into the interview room. To end in smoke. We know that when something gets burnt completely, it gets destroyed or ruined, and a lot of smoke is the only end result. So to end in smoke means to come to nothing. An example, all the efforts of his parents to correct his habits ended in smoke. Next is to get cold feet. This idiom denotes a feeling of worry or doubt that is strong enough to stop you from doing something that you had planned to do. An example sentence would be, I wanted to try skydiving on my vacations abroad, but I got cold feet. To play possum. Well, possum here refers to opossum, which is a small wild animal and a unique one in nature. This animal falls into an apparent coma when it senses danger, which gives the observer an appearance of death. So to play possum means to pretend to be dead or asleep. For example, Raj always plays possum when his mother asks him to clean up his room. Next idiom is to split hairs. The phrase is a metaphor for dividing so fine an object as a single hair, used when someone makes petty distinctions on some issue. So to split hairs means to make petty or trivial distinctions, to quibble. An example sentence would be, the two sisters spent a great deal of time arguing about the hair-splitting question of whom, out of the two of them, did their mother love more. to strike while the iron is hot. It is common knowledge that blacksmiths must shape iron into objects during the brief time when it is red hot. So when you strike while the iron is hot, you are taking advantage of a good opportunity. For example, given the current economic recession, you may not get a better offer. If I were you, I would strike while the iron is hot and accept it. Wet behind the ears. This is a very interesting idiom. It refers to a newborn baby who is so recently born as to be still wet behind the ears among other places. So the idiom is used to point out to someone who is inexperienced or naive. An example sentence would be, in the firm, the new recruits who were fresh out of college were considered wet behind the ears by the management and hence were first made to go through an extensive training program before they could be entrusted with serious deliverables. Closer to the end, we have the phrase writing on the wall. This idiom is mythological in origin. It comes from the Bible, in which the prophet Daniel, who is renowned for his wisdom, interprets a mysterious writing that a disembodied hand has inscribed on the palace wall as a portent or a sign that King Belshazzar will be overthrown. So the phrase writing on the wall means a sign or an event that foretells what is going to happen in the future, especially failure or disaster. An example sentence would be, the high attrition rate, plunging profits, and shrinking revenues were the writing on the wall that the company might eventually be forced into bankruptcy. And the last idiom in this lesson is to wake up on the wrong side of bed. Left, as opposed to right, has long been considered evil or inauspicious by various societies. Often, the left side is also referred as the wrong side. Say, for instance, if someone gets up on the wrong side of the bed, it originally meant to get up on the left side. And because of all the superstitions associated with left, this was believed to be a bad omen, which would probably spoil your whole day. From that, the idiom to get up on the wrong side of the bed started meaning to be irritable or in a bad and unpleasant mood from the moment you wake up for no obvious reason. So that completes this lesson. All the best for any exams that you might be preparing for. For a comprehensive coverage of this topic, do watch the other 3 lessons covering the rest of the 150 idioms. Hope you liked this lesson. For any doubts or queries on this topic, please feel free to drop a comment on the video page. Alternatively, you may mail us your comments or feedback or any queries at aptispeak@gmail.com. Subscribe our channel and stay tuned for more such videos. Thank you.